Hey, what's going on? It's me, Patrick Gnarly. We're going to be talking about buying used guitars if you don't know what you're doing.
But Patrick, I want something new and not messed up.
Most people who buy guitars brand new don't really mistreat them. They barely even play them as is. So, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times when you're looking at used guitars, most of them are going to be in very good condition, almost like new. The big risk with buying a used guitar is you're not guaranteed a lot of things. So we'll get to that. But let's keep going. So you could go to a store and buy a brand new guitar, but there's a lot of really big advantages to buying used. You get some pretty big discounts. I'm going to give you some tips to help you purchase a used guitar and things to look for, some red flags, and it'll take maybe 10 minutes at the most when you actually do it. So I'm going to split it into 3 parts. So there's research, condition, and purchasing. Research before you buy. The first thing I check when I'm buying a piece of used gear is, do they have a return policy? Now, this immediately shuts down Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, a lot of places on Reverb do not take returns. So make sure if you're starting out and you're not 100% certain with your capabilities, find a shop with a return policy. If you make a mistake, you should be able to just return the item without an issue. And remember, the guitar might be exactly what you want. It's how it was advertised, the condition, the price was great. You might just not like it. So make sure you know what you're buying and if you can return it. So some places that sell used gear with a return policy would be Guitar Center, Musician's Friend, Chicago Music Exchange, Music Go Round, some shops on Reverb. I mean, there's a lot of places out there, so really check. Hold on a second. Let me pause the video. Hold on. Let me clarify something. So when you go to a store that has a used section, everything I'm about to tell you after this, they do for you. So they check the condition, they look at pricing, literally everything I'm about to tell you. But if you want somebody else to do that for you, you can stop watching right now. Go to one of those stores, go to any store that has a used section, and they're going to check condition, they're going to check pricing, all that stuff. But if you want to save some money, you can do that stuff yourself. Usually when a store buys something, they buy it pretty cheap because they have to have some overhead and then they have to pay their employees, etc. So you can get a better deal usually if you buy something yourself. But there's a little more work. So I just wanted to clarify that. So if you want to keep watching, go for it. I got to go. But keep in mind, some stores that have return policies have restocking fees, and some return policies are much shorter than others, so make sure you get it in writing. For example, Guitar Center, as of the posting of this video, has a 45-day return policy. That's massive. But on their vintage gear, it's only 3 days. That is not a mistake you want to make. Vintage gear is not cheap. But for the rest of this video, let's assume that you're buying from like Facebook Marketplace or off a friend and there's no takebacks. You buy it, it's yours. Next, I would always check to make sure you know exactly what you're buying, especially if you're not able to see it in person yet. I would really check every single line of the description to make sure you know exactly what you're buying. Especially if you're not able to see it in person, if you're buying online, sight unseen, you really got to read everything. Sometimes people will put important details in there. I mean, it could get buried in a paragraph or it could be somewhere towards the end. Things like neck repair, refinished, not sure if they're original parts. It's supposed to be this model. Most people know exactly what their item is. So if somebody's unsure of those details, it's probably not a good sign. So it's probably best to skip it if you're new to buying used gear. Now, they're often going to provide photos, so make sure you look through the photos carefully. A red flag to look out for is very few or blurry or odd photos. If somebody's trying to sell you something shady, they're often going to take bad photos to make it hard to prove they sold that item to you. Or they just want to be dishonest about it. So just skip anything with bad photos for the most part. Also, if you're on some sort of marketplace, look at the seller. Are they a really well-established account with hundreds of sales? Are they a physical store you can just go to? That's the best one. Or are they just somebody named Jessica with no photo and they just joined with no history whatsoever? Sorry, Jessica. if that's even your real name. Another thing to look out for is the serial number. If any guitar you're buying does not show the serial or the serial number is damaged, that's another red flag. Oftentimes people steal items, or if they get it in some way that it's not legal, they're going to rub off or damage the serial number, since guitars are actually not as common as you think. The idea is that you can kind of hide what the item is supposed to be, or if it was stolen, they can't prove it was stolen with that kind of thing going on. So a lot of slimy people will buy these and look the other way. And then, or it could be somebody that doesn't even know and they try to sell it and they don't know it's stolen. So do not make the mistake of buying something stolen or with the serial number kind of destroyed, because it can be taken from you. Even if you purchased it fairly, it might not have been legally because they didn't actually own it. Another thing is that sometimes people accidentally list something that's not actually what it is. And you can actually look up things by serial, but be careful, not all the serial lookups are accurate. Even calling the companies isn't the best. But what you can do is you can look up what it's supposed to be. Ideally, what you want to do is when you see a guitar, go look up the pictures of what it's supposed to be. If there's something labeled as a 1998 Les Paul Standard, go and Google it. Go to images. All right, so this is going to be a lot of information that's going to skip over some stuff, but I need to explain something about models, years, specific types of guitars, etc. So, you ever think about cars? You know what a Ford Mustang is? That's one of my favorite cars. One Ford Mustang from 1964 is not the same as a Mustang from 1968. It is not the same as a Mustang from 1992. It is not the same as a Mustang from 2015. So if you notice, they're all called Ford Mustangs, but they're not all the same car. Same thing for the most part with guitars. One year's guitar is not the same as another year's guitar, even if they have the same name. Model numbers and series and all these things change, and they sometimes don't even tell you. So you have to do some research to figure out if a Gibson Les Paul is the same Gibson Les Paul you want. So for example, if you look up Gibson Les Paul and just that, you actually might have a hard time doing that. There's hundreds of different versions of Gibson Les Pauls. You got Les Paul Studios, Standards, the 2015 Standard, Traditional, Traditional Pro, Traditional Pro 2, Traditional Pro 3, Deluxe, Deluxe Custom, Custom Light, the 1976 Custom reissue, Made to Measure, Murphy Lab. I mean, the list goes on. So when somebody says they have something, really try and make sure that's the exact model. Without extensive knowledge of like neck profiles, color options, pickup combination, years of manufacturing, it's easy to pick up the wrong guitar that's in a sale when it should be something else, even if it's an accident. So let's assume you looked at the guitar and you know what the pictures show and the model they're describing, and it's consistent with everything they're listing it as. Make sure the price is not too good to be true. Some scammers will often list a guitar that's way cheaper than the going rate because they know a lot of people will jump at the opportunity. There are people that put stuff out there, they don't know what the value of it is. It happens. This is usually a red flag if the guitar is going for like half or a third less than the typical price of that guitar is. You got to be extraordinarily cautious with these things. The pictures could be right. That could be the exact model they're talking about. But the idea is that some scammers will list a guitar with real pictures, a crazy price, but when you actually go out to look at it, it's not the guitar in the pictures. Crazy little scam there. There's even people that what they'll do is they'll put a guitar out for a crazy deal, and then they'll get obviously a bunch of messages. And what they'll do is they'll say, hey, I got a ton of people talking to me. If you're serious about buying, give me some cash right now, and I'll put it on hold for you. You'll never see that cash back or that guitar. Do not fall for those scams. So for anybody that's buying used guitars and you're not really sure about what models and prices like make a good deal or even a normal deal, I'm going to make this very clear. We're going to zoom in here. Do not look at asking prices. The reason you don't do that is because anybody can ask for any amount. How much they sell for is a completely different story. Look at completed and sold listings. If you don't see a lot of them, you got to go based on what you know. But for a lot of popular brands, you can really see how much they sell for. And this changes. Trust me. There are some years where some guitars sold for a lot more than others. And there are some eras where if you're buying a guitar, it was terrible. And I'm going to tell you right now, the used gear's going to be a buyer's market for a little bit. Well, assuming the economy is good. We won't get into that. Anyways, so is there anything else we need to check out before we go and look at it? Ask somebody. You can always ask a friend or someone you trust. They might even come with you. I don't recommend asking strangers online because you don't really know what kind of experience they have. And you're probably thinking, well, Patrick, you're some random guy. How am I supposed to trust you? Excellent question. I have 20 years of guitar playing knowledge. I also have 15 years on and off of working in shops. So I got to do this every day. I loved used gear. Anytime somebody brought something in, I was always just like, this is great. Scavenger hunt. Let's go on the internet. Let's research. Let's learn about this particular year and this particular model. But even then, I'm not a all-knowing expert on everything. There's going to be things that I don't know. And there's plenty you don't know. So you want to ask for help. Even with all this experience, I can't know everything. So don't be afraid to ask somebody to go along with you or for their point of view. In fact, ask as many people as you can. Go to a forum, get a bunch of people's information, but don't stop with new ones. Go to old ones. Do you know how many decades of information is on the internet now? It's amazing how many people don't look at old forums. Go check out information, even if it's a little out of date. You want to just get an opinion. So, enough research. If everything checks out, you look at the pictures, the pricing, the model number, the year, the serial, everything adds up. What do you do when you actually go check it out? I'll tell you. We're going to talk about condition. So, I like to start with the frets. I like to play it, make sure every fret is good. I will literally play every single fret on a guitar. And I don't just play it for a second. I do bends on it. I check the usual spots, play the cowboy chords, everything you can think of. You play that thing as if you're going to play it for the rest of your life.
Hey, have you subscribed yet? Make sure you subscribe. Also, I forgot to say what you're looking for. What you're looking for is any kind of buzzing. If you don't know what that sounds like, here's a compilation of one of the most famous YouTube videos on fret buzz. Fret buzz!
First position fret buzz is the worst. It'll make you not want to buy a good guitar.
Where is it?
It's fret buzz!
Yeah, isn't that crazy? That's been up there for years. That guy's awesome. It was a really annoying video at first too, but then it turned into a really good one. Anyways, so you want to look for that. If you hear any of that fret buzz very prominently or can't hold a note, pass. Just pass on it. It's not set up well. It's not good. If there's a low fret, you don't really want to do that work. You're buying a used guitar. You're not buying a damaged guitar.
If you see divots typically around the first, second, third, maybe fourth frets, you may want to consider walking away from it depending on the price. There might be a considerable amount of fret wear. And if there's not a lot of meat on the bones, that is not a cheap fix. Now, a refret is different than recrowning or doing some fret dressing. As you play a guitar, the frets will start to wear down, and you just need to file them and make sure they're round again. But the issue is that you can only do that so many times. And if you get out of that fret, there's no more meat on the bone. You're looking at like a $400 repair. That is awful, especially if you're trying to get a good deal. So this will also reveal if the guitar is set up well or not. A big red flag with guitars being sold used is if there's no strings on it or it has a poor setup. I mean, think about it this way. How are you supposed to test it out if there's no strings on it? Or if it doesn't even play well? But again, how are you supposed to tell if it's actually good enough or if there's not like a flaw with the frets or the neck? I mean, if you see a guitar with no strings or it's really poorly set up and you're new to this, it might be a good idea just to skip it. Make sure you could play it before you can buy it. I mean, you're not going to buy a car without driving around the block, right? If they ain't got no gas in the tank, how are you supposed to do that? Anyways, while we're talking about setups, keep in mind a lot of people will play a guitar that's not really set up well, but they're still able to get by with it. Hey, anyways, make sure that you're aware of what a good setup is. And I mean, actually know, like measurements. There's an old saying, which is, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. So I don't know how accurate that is. Too many times have I seen somebody say a guitar is perfectly fine and set up well, but then I find out the neck is bowed so bad you could fly a plane under the strings. Now, Let's say you've played every string and every fret and you've done some bending and it plays fine. Assuming it's an electric guitar or it's an electric acoustic, make sure you turn every knob, make sure it plugs in and plays, make sure the battery's not dead if it takes a battery. All right, so the electronics. This is going to be an interesting part because most electronics are pretty easy to fix or just replace. The neck, the frets, all that other stuff, much more difficult. But the electronics, usually pretty easy. However, if you get there and you're trying to play the neck pickup and you flick the pickup selector and it's no signal and you didn't know that something was wrong with the guitar, dude, don't feel afraid to just be like, dude, you weren't honest with me. I'm going to walk away from this. Even though a lot of that stuff's really easy to repair, you don't know what else is wrong with the guitar and they should have been honest. But if you are more of a DIY, I'm going to fix it, it's not a big deal like I am, a lot of times you can get really good deals on that stuff. It's a couple like screw turns or an Allen wrench, or maybe you just use a soldering iron. These are like maybe 10-minute jobs at the most. But if you're new and you don't know what you're doing and you're uncomfortable doing repairs, walk away. If they didn't tell you ahead of time, walk away. If they're not giving you a super good deal, walk away. I mean, again, what else could they be lying about? But let's assume that the guitar has perfectly good electronics. You tried it out. Everything's good. The neck's good. The frets are good. Everything seems to be great in condition as far as like functionality. What's next? The actual aesthetic condition. Now, every guitar, even the ones that are brand new from a shop, are going to show signs of wear. I mean, somebody played it before you, even at the shop, more than likely. I mean, used guitar, that's the deal. You're not getting something perfect. But it's okay because you're paying for something that's used. You're getting a good deal. So with that comes the discount, but you're going to have to decide whether the condition is something you actually are okay with. Is the damage worth the price? Thankfully, oftentimes you could just use your eyes to look at the pictures, or you can like hold the guitar in the light and look at the finish. And you can feel every surface on the guitar. You'll be able to tell 99% of the time if something's been damaged or repaired. Some easy things to see are like metal parts. Are they rusty? Are they bent? Are they broken? Are they dirty? These are all things that affect value. And now, a rusty bridge on like a 1962 Strat, no big deal. But rust on a 2018 Strat and like dings in the finish, and they're asking for one like the same price as one that's like brand new looking, that's up to you, man. You really got to decide if it's worth the gamble. A great example of some things that are harder to spot, though, would be like on an acoustic. The bridge can do something called lifting or developing a belly. Now, because of the tension on strings with acoustics and the thinness of the wood, a lot of times heat and humidity and just time in general really pull that thin wood and it'll start to bulge out, or the bridge will start to become literally unglued. That's happened in guitars of mine. It'll separate itself from the body. I would stay away from those, especially on acoustics. Another example of just absolutely not, this is fatal, warped and cracked necks. Now, usually you could spot these when you're checking through like pictures, but if you don't see it for some reason, you can usually feel it while you're playing it and checking the frets. Sometimes people will adjust the guitar to compensate for a warped neck. Now, this mostly includes like the bridge being set up like really high in one way and really low in another. Or like if you notice the bridge looks funny and the strings are really high in one area, it's safe to say that something's wrong with the neck. It's probably warped. Even the truss rod, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with the neck. So if you're not comfortable sighting a neck, which kind of looks like this, bring somebody who is good at it. I mean, if you're playing it and it plays fine, but somebody sees that the neck is kind of warped, so it's your money. Now, this will probably be the most controversial part of the video, so buckle up, everybody. Get ready to say something in the comments. Now, a neck being cracked is usually another red flag of a pass on a guitar. I said that earlier. However, repaired headstocks, in my opinion, particularly on Gibsons, not as big of a deal as you might think. As long as the repair was done really well, you can get, huge discounts because the headstock was repaired. For those of you who don't know, what happens is you get a guitar and you drop it, kind of like this. What will happen is the headstock will pop right off. Now, thankfully, this is not too bad of a repair. It is expensive, but it doesn't mean the guitar is like, it's over. You just need to get it repaired. I've bought 2 Gibsons with repaired headstocks, and I've used them for years. Despite the cosmetics, they play and feel exactly like a brand new guitar. So my advice is don't shy away from repaired headstocks, but just make sure you check them out. But you cannot pay full price. That doesn't make sense. I would take, for example, a guitar with a repaired headstock over a guitar with like low damaged frets any day of the week.
We need to talk more about condition. Let's talk about the finish.
There's stuff called finish cracking, which typically happens on Fender guitars or like Fender-like guitars with bolt-on necks right around the neck pocket. But those are usually very thin and only paint deep. But it's kind of hard to gauge, and if you're new, it's kind of scary. If you see these kinds of cracks, that's okay for the most part. It is not great, but it doesn't hurt it functionally. However, if you see these cracks anywhere else, especially the neck, that is an indication of a drop or somebody being abusive to the guitar. You do not want to buy one of those. That is a huge red flag. Another common area of where there's damage is belt buckle rash. This is a common issue from guitars, especially older ones. They don't really hurt anything but the value. Like functionally, they're totally fine. A lot of people's guitars will have some sort of belt buckle rash, even if you don't wear one. You know, your pants buttons or maybe something in your pocket like your keys, something rubs against it. It could cause scratching or like the paint to flake a little bit. But that's not super, super common. But it is a common issue to be aware of. It's not a big deal though. Just make sure price goes down. Also be aware of, all right, so this is a little bit this is pretty specific. Okay. So there's 2 types of finishes for the most part on most guitars. There's polyester and there is nitrocellulose lacquer finishes. All right, so I need to explain why this is a red flag. So poly finished guitars are cheaper than nitrocellulose finished guitars. So nitro versus poly. And sometimes people try to mimic this look of an older nitro finished guitar because it looks pretty cool. Poly doesn't do that naturally. What a lot of people do is they'll take sandpaper and they'll just, try and get the finish to wear off like a nitro one does, because nitro finishes react to your sweat and your arm. And if you're playing a guitar for like 20, 30 years, it wears away and it looks, it's so cool. A lot of people will try to do this thing called relicking. Fender is very famous for this, and this is why it's controversial. Fender does this thing that kind of makes the guitars look like distressed or like jeans with holes in them. The idea is that real vintage guitars are very expensive. Like if you can find a guitar from the 50s and 60s, a lot of them look like those distressed jeans. But they're, tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds. So what Fender decided to do with their custom shop is they decided to recreate that look by making a new guitar and then sanding away that nitro finish in a way that looks natural. I think it looks so cool, and I love it. A lot of people hate it. They feel like you have to earn it. And go ahead. Go ahead in the comments. I see what you're doing right now. Oh, relics are dumb. Why can't you just do it yourself? Listen, it's just a taste thing. I don't have tens of thousands of dollars to go pick up a vintage 1952 Tele. I can't do that. I'll never be able to do that. None of you, for the most part, will. If you feel like relics or distressed guitars are bad, okay, I got it. We all understand. But the point I'm trying to make here is that there are people that try to recreate that with a poly finished guitar, and it looks bad, and it completely destroys the resale value. So you do what you like, but if you're not getting like an 80% discount on that relic finish on a poly guitar, usually they're like under $1,000 or something like that for a poly. You're kind of wasting your money unless you're getting a huge deal. Just stay away from that stuff. However, if it's a nitro finish and it looks cool and has that wear, most people aren't going to pay more for that, but some people might pay the same. So it depends on the year, depends on how good it looks. That's a thing. And that actually brings me to another point, which is the checking. So real nitro finishes look better for the most part with age and wear. They suffer for something called finish checking. And this is another thing that some people really hate, some people really like. I think some finish checking is cool, but a lot of it, or like too little of it, looks bad. This constitutes as wear. But if you're really neglectful of your guitar, if you leave it in like a hot room and then you leave it out in your car overnight and it's cold, you'll see those cracks show up. And as the wood swells and contracts from time in the weather, that finish will really get broken in with those paper thin cracks. Now, this is a personal preference. It doesn't constitute that much of a deal off the price. But again, if somebody sees it or if you see it, it is a bit of a deal. So don't feel pressured into paying more if it has checking. It's up to your personal preference, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily damaged. You'll see. You'll have to do some research on your own.
Hey, you know what I also didn't mention? Counterfeits. We're going to talk about that in another video because it's a whole big thing. And I don't really want to talk about it during the used thing. But I will mention this. If you're looking at guitars and they're used, you do have to worry about counterfeits. But as long as you check out the pictures, the serial number, and do all that research, you should be able to find them. But we're going to talk about counterfeits in another video. That's all we're going to say right now.
But let's move on. We're getting really specific here. All right. Now that you check the playability and the condition, and everything feels good and looks good, if the guitar is what they say it is, that's got the serial number, the neck is fine, the frets are fine, the body damage, the neck damage is either non-existent or acceptable, you plugged it in, it feels good, it sounds good, you like it, what are we supposed to do? Pay them. Now, there's a lot of obvious negotiation tactics. I mentioned a couple in there that can be taught about pricing and the market and waiting for, there's a lot of stuff. If everything works fine and they said what it is and it is what they say it is, just go buy it. I mean, the used market is so stressful. Honestly, if you ever sell a used guitar, you're going to be so happy if somebody just says, that's what you offered, that's what it is, that's a fair amount, let's do it. I'm not saying your money is going to be thankful for that, but try to be respectful of people that are actually selling used goods. If there's no reason to ask for a discount, try not to. It's kind of a scuzzy thing to do. The guitar is worth what you're willing to pay for it. And if you show up and you try to offer them less and there's no reason to, it's going to look really bad. And even though you might not see them again, I'm just saying, if you're patient and you're shrewd and you got a little luck, you can find guitars for like 50 to 60% off the new price or more. The longer something sits, the more people want to get rid of it. So keep an eye on stuff. Some guitars are obviously more valuable than others, and they don't typically go down from what they were new. Now, that's pretty rare, but there are deals that can happen. So I hope this video was helpful in letting you know how to be more confident in finding gear and getting something used and purchasing. If any one of those things goes wrong during your purchase, then like I said, just walk away. You don't owe them anything. If they were dishonest, especially, or they didn't even have the knowledge ready, that's part of the deal. Once again, there's nothing they can say to make you purchase that item. If it's not what you wanted, it's not the right price, be prepared to walk away. If you want to talk about negotiation tactics, this is the biggest one. I'll give you this one for free. The worst thing you can do in any sales environment or negotiation is not be able to walk away. If you really want that guitar, you might take a bad deal. If you really want that thing, you might let them see it and they might not budge. You really got to be able to go, all right, well, sorry, I'm out of here. Most sellers are pretty reasonable, and they don't want to make the trip again. They don't want to have all this rigmarole again. So don't be afraid to walk away. It might work out in your favor. And remember, here's another thing too. These are mass-produced items for the most part. Even though there's, oh, this is special, or oh, this is limited edition, or oh, this is a rare color. It could take months or years, but you will find another one. It just takes a little bit longer. So I hope that helps as well. But there are always going to be guitars that get away from you, or maybe they get discontinued. So I've felt that loss. In fact, I think I'm going to make that my next video, guitars I'm still looking for. But I hope you find a great piece of gear, something that lasts you the rest of your life. And thank you so much for watching. If you haven't listened to my band, check out my band Finals. There's a link in my channel description. It's got music in there. Let me know what guitar got away, or maybe you bought a used guitar with this information. Let me know in the comments. I am genuinely interested. Thank you guys so much for watching. Everybody, stay gnarly. Bye-bye.